Hi, welcome to the bathtub. It's the old masturbator. You want to come up here? Old masturbator's dog wants to get up here without attacking me? Okay. She just, as soon as she hears the beeping of the camera, oh. And this is the old masturbator's t-shirt. And what else have we got, Lucky? Have you been she's been pretty good today. We hadn't been attacked by her for at least 2 or 3 days. She thought about it a couple of times. You want to get down? You can get down. Go ahead. Get down. Off. Go ahead. Good dog. Good dog. Very good. Very well done. No aggression. And of course, as we are known in ancient China, Pao Zhao, Zhao Shou. Here, you want to write that down quick. You want to write those characters down in case you need them when you're going to China. Pao Zhao, Zhao Shou, foamy bathtub professor. That's how I'm known. We go by a lot of names. We're like the trickster. We have names in every culture has names for the esteemed foamy bathtub professor, and that's just the ancient Chinese one. So we're entering a whole new era in the bathtub. We have a lot of different eras in the bathtub. We always do the same thing, and all this different eras that we go through since way back in the 30s and the 40s, when this was a USO show and a radio show before that. We've been through a lot of different phases. This is the we call it bathing with a vengeance. We're bathing with a vengeance now, right into the wee hours of the 21st century, and the total, complete screw up mess we've made of ourselves. And we're gonna bathe with a vengeance every day, no matter what happens, how crappy the world gets. We're not going to read the newspaper. We're not going to look at the news for at least a half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I shoot for an hour every day, and we're just going to bathe in the bathtub. We're going to read a book in the bathtub for no reason whatsoever. We're not going to learn anything. We're not going to experience any ethnocultural with wherewithal. We're not going to learn a single thing. If you find yourself learning anything from your reading for that bathtub period, or from this terrible show, and I'm sure that'll never happen, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so if you're learning anything, you're not doing anything wrong. Now we're going to talk a little bit today. This is a crossover edition. I did a long piece about a writer I really came to admire in the past year or so. Her name is Sanora Babb. This is her novel, whose names are unknown. We've talked about it in the past. We'll talk a little bit more about it today. I'm going to put a link below to a long piece I did at the New Republic with my great editor there, Laura Marsh, who puts me through the paces, man. She really puts me through the paces when I turn these things in. I gotta rethink every single sentence sometimes, but she helped to make them better. Anyway, Sanora Babb was a woman we've talked a bit about. All the biographical information is going to be in that link that I'm attaching here, and I'll probably get everything wrong because I forget everything. Clear mountain water. Raphael effulgence, I think, in the Bernie T-shirt, which will go unremarked. She wrote this. She was raised basically in really dirt poor parts of the country, Oklahoma Territory, where she was born her first few years. Then her parents lost their farm in the Dust Bowl, and they moved to Colorado, where they were still being hit by the Dust Bowl, and they lost a lot of money there. And they ran a couple of farms, right, just dirt poor. At one point, when they moved to Colorado, she's living in a dugout, which is basically a hole dug in the ground with a roof on it. And she came through all these years with a great deal of strength and a great deal of affection for the people around her. She had a very difficult parents. Her mother married, I think, when she was 14 or 15 to some total scoundrel who was a gambler and a baseball player and was never around. And she still managed to get through her life as well. And Sonora was raised with her sister, and when she got into she was able to go to college, go to high school when she was 10, I think. So when she was very young, she couldn't go anywhere. She was just basically working on this farm, raising broom corn, I think they called it. And she goes off to high school. When she gets a chance, she goes to school, works really hard, does very well, and eventually moves to L.A., where she works as a screenwriter. She's like, what's this? Is it Forrest Gump, who's always he's everywhere? She's sort of like the female Forrest Gump, but with kind of a brilliance about her. She shows up in the film business, and she gets involved with a lot of left-wing politics. She joins the John Reed Club. And all along the way, she's interested in trying to make the world a better place. She's very politically active, but she still manages to spend enough time in the bathtub just learning to write and read books that are well done to become a very good writer herself. So that's the long and the short of it. She wrote Whose Names Are Unknown in the 30s. She was commissioned by Bennett Cerf, and the story you'll see below, but she was out researching in Southern California, working for the, I forget the name of this authority, but one of these FDR organizations that was helping all the Okies and all the people, all the migrants coming into California. This is before we thought they were evil people who really needed to be thrown in cages, and they were actually trying to help them find homes in California and move them into decent jobs. And she worked with them in the 30s and started researching this book about this family that was like her family moving west. And along the way, her boss, Tom Collins, got her to meet John Steinbeck when Steinbeck was coming through researching for Grapes of Wrath. She gave him all her field notes, and he used a lot of them. And you can sort of see very strong similarities between what happens to the Jodes in California and what happens to Sanora Babb's families in California. And he didn't really sort of steal it. I think he still wrote a great book. But her book was finished after Grapes of Wrath came out, and Bennett Cerf said, well, there's no room for two books like this, because Grapes of Wrath was a big bestseller. Okay, so that's the kind of horrible story of it. But it took decades. After decades, she finally got this book published while she was just really near the end of her life. She kept rewriting it, and had this terrible luck, but she had an agent who really fought for her, and eventually came out. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's a lot of other books. We've talked about this. We put the Cry of... My favorite of her books, though, it's a very interesting book, Whose Names Are Unknown. My favorite of her books is Cry of the Tinamu, which was published by Muse Inc. Press. I don't know them very well, but they did a nice job. And this is her short stories. So she became a short story writer in the 30s and started publishing stories pretty much over her life. And she writes about very different types of people. So she writes about a very poor kid, a very poor Spanish-speaking kid in Mexico. She writes 2 or 3 good stories about Chinese women, because her husband was the great cinematographer James Wong Howe, and she knew his family very well, and so she was part of L.A.'s Chinese culture a lot because she ran a restaurant in L.A. The woman was everywhere. Anyway, there's all sorts of wonderful stories. There's one about a bunch of young girls. I think they're living in an L.A. house. I think it's in Los Angeles. And it's a kind of a ghost story about the kind of girls who would work in the offices in Hollywood. She just writes, and they're very, very polished. Kind of can't put them down. I'm a big fan of her short stories. So if you want to pick one book, I would suggest that. She became kind of well known because of the... Ken Burns did that 2 or 3 part documentary about the Dust Bowl several years ago. I had never seen it, but in the course of researching for that book, Clear Mountain Water, No Pixels, he talks a lot about Sanora Babb in that documentary, which helped revive interest in her. This is a book of her essays and prose, some nonfiction that she wrote. She was a journalist. She wrote a lot of journalism. She was actually a farm worker activist in parts of California. She went to jail at one point for organizing a strike. The woman just really was busy. I can say, I can't get through. I have trouble just walking the dog during the day. And there's some great photos. Her sister took a lot of photos, and a lot of just good journalism in there. This is her memoir. If you're a fan of memoirs, this is the one book of hers that in her lifetime did pretty well. An owl on every post. It's about her years growing up in these really difficult times of hers. She writes beautiful prose. Really, really lovely prose. And we've already talked about this. We put her on... she was one of our living poets. We talked about Told in the Seed and selected poems, which I liked very much. And this is a kind of cool book. This is called On the Dirty Plate Trail. If you're interested in Dust Bowl writing, then this has got a lot of the photos. I think her sister took some of them, and another photographer. And it's all her field notes, many of which were used by her and Steinbeck in putting together the refugee camps. And this is the new book, The Life of Sanora Babb. Iris Dunkel. It's come from University of California Press. We are big fans of this book. we really enjoyed reading it, and we loved learning about this kind of fascinating, kind of brilliant woman. I want to read 2 quick passages, and if I can find them. We don't do a very good job of preparing ourselves for this stupid show. Okay, I didn't mean to read this part, but I'm going to read it because I remember I like this. There's a lot of funerals in this book. Sorry. And I don't even remember who it is that's died. It's one of the neighbors named Starwood. And I don't remember this, but it's been about a long time since I read this, but I did like this paragraph, just a description of this really poor, modest funeral for a man. This is page 96 of Whose Names Are Unknown. Rain fell half mist and cold the day of Starwood's funeral. Neighbors drove for miles to the small schoolhouse and stood about in the yard waiting for the preacher to give them a sign. Blessed are the dead the rain falls on, shuttled their thoughts in gentle cadence, is the words they're hearing. Mrs. Starwood and the children were sitting inside, their faces swollen and red from weeping. We're sitting inside. We're sitting inside, their faces swollen and red from weeping. The bare coffin rested on 2 low benches in front of the teacher's desk. The smell of dust was not even driven out by the rain. The preacher sat in Anna's chair with a worn air of professional patience. His greenish-black coat shone with age and special care. His dark eyes, at once lonely and fierce, looked out from a sallow, wasting face at the empty seats. His long fingers pecked hard on the desk, partitioning his thoughts from the scene. Like his suit, he looked as if he too had been taken out of a trunk for the occasional participation in death. Anyway, she has a wonderful way. Almost every paragraph is written like that. Really hard, direct, sensible sentences, very, very physical, very sensory. And she also gets into the kind of the way these people look at their world around them, usually with a great deal of gentleness and kindness, a great deal of kindness in them, which is something it's nice to see kindness in this world. There were another passage I wanted to read, and I've already lost it. Is this the one? Oh, yeah. One of the characters says this. They're often talking politics in the world they're in. And she says that what people are trying to do is divide us. And she says, we're not really divided according to our nationalities, but by how much or how little money we have. And that's something that comes out of all of Sanora Babb's work, is that she's very much part of the life of all the people around her, especially the Native Americans, the Oto tribes near her when she's a child, and the Asian family of her husband, and all these different people she worked with, all the Okies coming to California. All these different cultures she felt quite at home in, but she did notice how some people had a lot of money and some people didn't. Anyway, that's our I think our feel-good writer. I think she never gave up. She always kept publishing these wonderful stories and books and poems, and she always took care of her family. And she was kind of an amazing character. I came out of it really admiring her. That's it. Stay safe. Hit the bathtub. You don't need to read anything that teaches you anything, okay? But if you read Sanora Babb, you may accidentally learn something that's not your fault. Okay, stay safe.